The train brakes screech in the Texas night, sparks showering against the steel rails. December 21, 1943. The platform at Camp Swift glows under arc lamps, a harsh white light cutting through the dark. German officers step down one by one, boots hitting American soil for the first time, not as conquerors, but as captives. They still wear their Wehrmacht coats, insignia intact, collar sharp, as though clinging to the illusion of authority. Their eyes shift quickly, perimeter fences, guard towers, the posture of American sentries armed with M1 rifles. At the center of the line is Hauptmann Hans-Georg von Mackensen, a Luftwaffe officer with a Knight's Cross pinned above his breast pocket. He has fought in France, flown sorties over Russia, and commanded men in the field. Tonight he is silent, jaw tight, pupils fixed not on the soldiers around him, but on the rows of civilian cars parked just beyond the wire. Fords and Buicks polished to a shine, chrome gleaming even in low light. His lips part as if to speak, then close again. Hours later, in the camp-issued notebook given to him at intake, he records a single sentence: "They live here better than our colonels in Berlin." A smell hits them before dawn. It rides the air like smoke from a foundry, thick, warm, undeniable. Roast beef, fat sizzling, potatoes baking. The German prisoners grip the cold wire mesh of the inner fence, noses lifting to trace the current. Inside the mess hall, American enlisted men move in easy rhythm, trays balanced, laughter carrying with the clatter of cutlery. Plates brim with meat, vegetables, bread, and butter stacked high as if rationing were a forgotten word. Outside, the officers stare in disbelief. For years, even the upper ranks of the Wehrmacht in Berlin had eaten thin slices of horse meat and hard bread crusts, softened with watery broth. Here, mere guards, farm boys in khaki, eat like generals. The shock is not subtle, not gradual, it is instant. One soldier mutters to another in clipped Saxon dialect, "So this is the land we thought decadent." He presses his hand to the fence until his palm stings with the imprint of steel. The image locks in, abundance as spectacle, food as artillery, comfort as a weapon that requires no trigger. The numbers explain what the senses already scream. America in 1943 produced 130 billion pounds of farm goods. Its railroads moved over 700 million tons of freight that year, enough to stockpile food and fuel for both soldiers overseas and civilians at home. A single Midwestern county harvested more wheat than an entire German province after Allied bombings. By contrast, German rail tonnage had collapsed under the weight of destroyed bridges in yards. Rations for Berlin civilians averaged 2,000 calories a day, slipping lower in bad months. Even officers in the Reich Chancellery, surrounded by privilege, could not match the daily intake of an average American factory worker's lunch. Measured in raw numbers, the gap is staggering. American civilians consumed roughly twice the calories of their German counterparts, while enjoying access to goods their enemies had not seen in years: coffee, sugar, butter, fresh fruit. In the cold math of logistics, America's farmers became as decisive as its generals. Every mile of rail, every ton of grain, every gallon of milk moved through a supply chain running with the precision of gears in a turbine. For the German officers behind the fence, the conclusion was inescapable. They were not looking at propaganda, they were looking at scale, at an industrial engine so vast that even its ordinary citizens outpaced the living standards of Germany's ruling elite. Inside a quiet office in Washington, files stacked like sandbags against the weight of war. The War Department's prisoner of war branch drafts protocols, not just for confinement, but for perception. Every POW camp will follow Geneva rules to the letter, but compliance is not just about legality. It is a stage. Reports circulate between Army intelligence officers. If German soldiers see the abundance of American life firsthand, morale back home will corrode faster than rail steel under bombing.
The logic is simple. You cannot convince men to fight for a Reich when their own eyes testify that the enemy's farmhands live better than their generals. British intercepts from Bletchley confirm that German officers in captivity send letters dripping with astonishment. Most never reach Berlin, censors strip out the details, but enough slip through to create rumors. In Berlin cafes, civilians whisper that captured officers are eating oranges in Texas, while they themselves queue for turnips. The Allies do not spread these rumors. They let German mouths do the work. In the same period, Reich intelligence fails to calculate the scale of America's agricultural machine. They have counted planes, tanks, shipyards. They have not counted wheat, cattle, corn, refrigeration, or rail mileage. That blind spot becomes a weapon. The numbers read like weapon specifications. A Texas farm in 1943 could supply beef for 30,000 meals per month, more than a German division on campaign. Cold storage facilities lined with ammonia compression systems kept meat fresh for weeks, while refrigerated rail cars moved at a capacity of 1,000 tons per day. Canning plants in Chicago turned out tins of vegetables in volumes equal to the weight of battleships. By the end of 1943, Texas alone held 40,000 German POWs, guarded by fewer than 8,000 American personnel, a ratio made possible only because the logistical pipeline was so smooth that scarcity never provoked riots. Each barracks was lit with electricity, each mess hall fed by the same distribution network that stocked American schools and hospitals. Civilian abundance translated directly into prisoner control. Where the Wehrmacht had relied on barbed wire and firing squads, the U.S. relied on the sheer gravity of plenty. To the German eye, the camp was not a prison, it was a mirror held up to the Reich, showing its shortages in humiliating detail. Then comes the first true contact. Not gunfire or bayonets, but daily life stripped bare. A line of POWs files into the mess hall for their first issued meal. Plates clatter onto trays. Bread is fresh, not stale. Butter is soft, not ration sliced. Meat portions are thick, cut clean, seared, and salted. The room is bright with overhead lights, walls freshly painted. In the corner, a guard reads a newspaper with box scores from a baseball game and advertisements for new cars. German officers exchange glances, disbelief etched into their posture. This is no show. There is no propaganda poster on the wall, no staged photograph. It is simply normal, American normal. And that is what breaks them. One prisoner whispers half to himself, half to his comrade, "If their guards live this way, what must their officers live like?" The sound of chewing and forks on plates becomes louder than any artillery barrage they have ever heard. The first meal is not sustenance, it is psychological shock. A realization that the Reich has been lying by omission. The contrast is too sharp, too visible. The front lines have moved from Europe to the mess hall in Texas, and the first engagement has already been lost. In the barracks, the counterattack begins not with weapons, but with words. Senior Nazi officers assembled their men at night, voices hard and clipped in the dim light of bare bulbs. They remind them of Prussian steel, of sacrifice, of the Führer's command. Lectures are staged, chess tournaments arranged, marching songs drilled into memory. The officers insist that hardship itself is proof of superiority, that suffering marks the chosen from the weak. Yet the younger men drift. They linger near the library, flipping through English language magazines left deliberately in plain sight. They leaf through Sears catalogs, stunned by images of washing machines, phonographs, and children's toys stacked in suburban living rooms. To German officers raised under ration cards and blackouts, these catalogs read like science fiction made real. Their effort to impose discipline is like a brittle gear forced against a powerful engine. It grinds, sparks, and eventually cracks. Strain sets in at the human and technical limit. The system of letters reveals the fracture most clearly. Prisoners write home about abundance, food, clothing, the absence of fear. German censors intercept many of these letters, but not all. When fragments reach Germany, rumors circulate that captured officers in America are living in comfort unimaginable at home. Wehrmacht leadership grows alarmed, noting in internal memos that returning letters damage morale and provide ammunition for defeatist talk. Bundesarchiv, 1944. Inside the camps, officers struggle to maintain cohesion. One diarist writes bitterly, "How can we say we are the master race when even their farmers' wives live better than our generals?" The sentence spreads quietly, quoted in whispers by prisoners walking the perimeter. In mechanical terms, the Reich's ideological transmission is stripped of its teeth. The chain of authority no longer drives the wheels of loyalty. It slips, rattles, fails to engage. The Americans do not intervene directly. They let the numbers, the meals, the magazines do the grinding. But the setback comes sharp, bloody, and real. In late 1944 at Camp Tonkawa in Oklahoma, loyalty to the Reich erupts into violence. A group of hardline prisoners, still devoted to Hitler, discover that one of their fellow POWs has spoken admiringly of American life. They convene a secret court inside the barracks, deliver a death sentence, and carry it out with fists and strangling cords. The body is discovered the next morning. The camp reels. American guards tighten security, but the damage is deeper than a single death. It is evidence that abundance has fractured the German ranks. Some cling harder to ideology, fearing humiliation. Others, already convinced of American superiority, fall silent, unwilling to risk the same fate. Intelligence officers record the incident as proof. The United States has turned its civilian prosperity into a silent weapon, one that cuts without firing a shot. The Reich's officers now fight not against their captors, but against their own divided loyalties. The Americans improvise not with deception, but with exposure. Commanders quietly authorize greater access to ordinary life beyond the wire, calculating that reality itself will do more than any propaganda film. POWs are marched under guard to nearby farms, where they watch women drive tractors, children carry lunches in paper bags, and workers clock out to cars waiting in gravel lots. They see abundance without ceremony, canned goods stacked in warehouses, radios humming in kitchens, baseball on the air. To the officers, it is a revelation and a humiliation. They had been told that America was decadent, soft, incapable of discipline. Instead, they see order built on plenty, not scarcity. U.S. military intelligence calls it psychological erosion, but the mechanics are straightforward. By 1945, over 425,000 German prisoners are dispersed across America, each one a witness to the scale of civilian prosperity. A chain reaction begins. The more they see, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion of German superiority. The breaking point comes in spring 1945. Inside one camp library, German officers gather around a radio, static, crackling, the voice of a BBC broadcaster carrying across the room. The news is unmistakable. Hitler is dead in Berlin, the Reich collapsing in rubble. The faces of the officers register not rage, but resignation. They look around them. Walls painted clean, shelves lined with books, guards sipping coffee in the corner. Outside, civilian cars idle at the gate, their chrome flashing in the sun. The comparison is unavoidable. Germany is burning. America is thriving. The Wehrmacht's most loyal sons realize the war is not just lost in Europe, it was lost here, quietly, in every meal, every catalog, every glimpse of a refrigerator humming in a farmhouse kitchen. The psychological barrage has reached its climax, and the officers cannot deny what their senses confirm. The Reich is a wrecked engine, seized and sputtering, while America's machine runs at full throttle. When the war ends, the data confirms the damage. A U.S. Army report in 1946 notes that more than one-third of repatriated German prisoners of war expressed sympathy for democratic ideals after captivity, many citing the material well-being of American civilians as proof of a superior system. Prisoner of War Utilization Division Report, 1946. The irony is exact and inescapable. America had conquered not only with tanks and planes, but with supermarkets and railroads, with refrigerators and radios. For the German officers, the most devastating revelation was not the thunder of American firepower, but the quiet evidence that ordinary U.S. families lived better than Germany's elite.